Hey guys, it's Cyrus of Chaos. Today I'm here with Pete Souders, and we're going to be watching this bout between Perez Maurice from Argentina and Benitez from Venezuela in the finals of the Panamerican Olympic Qualification tournament from a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to let Pete introduce himself and tell us why he picked this bout to watch. So Pete, take it away.
Hey, so like Andrew said, I'm Pete Souders. I'm a former member of the U.S. national team. And I picked this bout because I thought it was a really good example of something that I always tried to communicate to my students and peers and teammates and other people when talking about fencing and analyzing fencing. One of the things that fencers will often bring up as they start to make the jump from sort of a beginner or an intermediate level fencer to an advanced one is talking about how there just aren't that many moves in fencing. And they're kind of right in the sense that you can really only it's rock, paper, scissors. You're either attacking, stopping an attack, or making some kind of counter time action. And so then they get confused of how, if it's so simple, how do you actually get better and how do you improve? And the answer is you take one of those really simple actions and you start manipulating the subtle edges of it and the timing and the distance, and you can turn one action into a lot of possibilities. And as you're going to see, Perez ends up dominating this bout effectively off of one action, a step lunge, done a number of different ways with great effect. And I just think it's a great bout to watch just from the fencing perspective of Perez. I mean, she does a great job in probably one of the most high pressure tournaments in the world, if not the most high pressure.
Yeah, totally.
Just because of what the stakes are. And we'll talk about that in a second. But she does such a good job of keeping her head and keeping control and just executing these really fine adjustments throughout this bout to really put on a dominating performance. And I think it's something that almost anyone could learn a lot from watching it.
Totally. And just to expand on what you were saying about this being a very high-pressure tournament, the Olympic qualification path for fencing is really complicated. We don't need to get into all of that right now. It would take us till the end of this video to fully elaborate on that. But essentially, once everyone has qualified people through teams, through region, whatever, the remaining countries that have not qualified anyone are allowed to send one person per weapon to these tournaments, and only the winner gets to go. So I think this one had 15 people in it. Someone check me on that, but something like that. And only the winner gets to go to the Olympics. So
yeah, and to me that makes it this tournament, I can't even imagine. I mean, with all the fencing I did and all the fencing you did, you're probably in the same boat. I can't even imagine the pressure at this tournament because any other of the tournaments that you would really think are high pressure environments, the worst thing is that you still get to say you were there. I mean, you go to the Olympics and the Olympics is unbelievable pressure wise, and the atmosphere there is really something different. But at the end of the day,
you lose in the first round, you're still an Olympian.
Still an Olympian.
Yeah.
And this tournament, if you don't win this tournament, that's 4 years of hard work that's just not led to where you wanted to get. So the pressure in these bouts, I mean, it's hard probably for anyone watching this to imagine the pressure, but you should try as you watch it. And if you sit there and you think, wow, why is one of these fencers making this mistake? The pressure in this, even as a former high-level competitor, I cannot imagine.
Yeah, totally. It's not something we've ever dealt with before. So on that note, we're going to start the bout.
So yeah, we're going to watch the first couple touches, but I don't actually think the interesting things start until they've gotten about 6 or 7 touches in and they start to feel a little bit of a rhythm.
Yeah, and that usually will happen in bouts like this, where one fencer will either be doing better or they'll be pretty even with each other, and then the person with more experience kind of figures something out, whether it's timing-wise or distance-wise, and then it kind of breaks the other person open. And when that happens, it's usually up to the other person to start playing a more like it's on them to adjust their game to the adjustment that the first person made. And the adjustment in this bout is very interesting.
It always confuses me when fencers make an action like that and then look confused towards their coach. Like, you're really good. You should
know that's against you, exactly.
you know you made that mistake. But again, the pressure of the moment, you can lose track of what's going on.
So let's just watch that one again, because that's actually kind of a precursor to what you're talking about, the action that works so well later. Perez is trying to do attack and prep here, but it's not very sharp. The pause is done too late in the action, and she's basically just finishing with the attack of Benitez.
Yeah, there's no commitment and no precision to it. She's just sort of haphazardly lunging in the box, but there's no real intention behind it.
Yeah.
Which again, like I said, probably has something to do with the stress of the moment and knowing that this bout is for everything.
All the marbles.
And again, she's looking for that timing in the box, but she's late, very late.
We're going to watch that one more time.
It's a nice attack from Benitez,
too. It is, yeah. There's minimal, pulling. It's just, good footwork, and she hits when she's supposed to. That's preparation. She even challenged it and then, decided not to.
Yeah. Changing her mind.
It was a good decision to change her mind.
Kind of a junky action, but I think we are probably in agreement that left had a more convincing case on that one.
For sure. If anything, maybe the clash with the guards is enough to give the referees enough doubt to just decide to throw it out, which I think at this point in the bout is probably fine.
Yeah, you also just, in slow motion, you never know, but that looks like that's the decision.
Yeah, totally.
So this is where, if you can pause it real quick.
Sure.
So this is where we start to see some really nice control from Perez. She's sharpened up that preparation and made it two really small, tight steps, and then a really explosive lunge with conviction. She makes up her mind 1-2, and then bang. And there's no doubt in her mind about the timing. There's no doubt in her mind about when the opportunity is going to be there. And she takes advantage. You jumped quite a long way back there, Andrew.
I did. I was trying to find, this one, the first one that didn't work.
Yes. Yes, you can see the difference there, that the arm is going over the top and the lunge is not as crisp or as sharp, because there's not the same level of confidence that she's going to have the opportunity. And when we get back to that, the one at 3-2 or 3-3, everything is with decision.
Here we go.
Yeah. So she stays low, and then when she lunges, she goes full commitment, arm straight to the target. Clear action, and a really nice touch. Probably the first really nice touch she's made in this bout.
Yeah, I think also something that is happening here is in the beginning, I think Benitez was more doing her own thing, and in this one, I think she's very clearly seeing the hesitation from Perez as an indication that Perez is about to go backwards. So she decides at that moment she's going to make a long attack instead of just attacking the way she was before. And not to say that that's the wrong thing to do, but it's something you should take into account later, that Perez is doing this and maybe pull it short or finish short or something. But
yeah, Perez did a good job of selling the idea that there was a second intention action coming before putting in that prep. But that's a really nice touch.
Yeah, before turning it into a third intention action.
Mm-hmm. And so that one, she actually gives the same start and then just a little bit more stutter step than the last one. So there's just a slight second tap of the foot off of the second step, makes her wait just a little longer, which causes it a slightly different look for Benitez from her perspective, and she can score the, again, quote unquote, same touch by doing just a little bit differently and then stealing the timing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what we're looking at right now, is how those touches can be just slightly different and then she pulls out. She doesn't do the second tap that time. It's just 2 steps lunge again. It comes a little bit quicker than the one before. So she's now gone a little bit quicker, a little bit slower, and back to the first tempo on 3 consecutive actions. She does the same touch 3 times in a row, but it's different enough that it continues to be useful.
Yeah. And
she gets a little lucky on this one.
I think this one also is an example of doing the right thing but not executing it well. Like Benitez doesn't make this is what I would consider to be like a half action. Like instead of actually she knows she wants to do a pull here, but instead of actually making a pull, she kind of gets stuck. And so even though Perez is picking the wrong action to be what Benitez is doing, because Benitez is not executing it well, Perez still wins this touch.
And there's a lesson in that too, because one thing that, again, you're right, Perez really did not do the right action here. This is really, she should lose this touch, but even in choosing the wrong action, does commit, does give the full lunge, gives the full extension, and gives herself an opportunity to score on the mistake.
Yeah, totally.
Which is always something like I always tell people, and I think it was actually, not to name drop people, but didn't Tim Morehouse always say that? Wrong and strong?
Yes.
his favorite phrase.
Yeah.
So like even in that moment where Perez probably in that lunge knows she's been beat tactically, she still gives herself an opportunity and gets rewarded for giving herself that opportunity.
Definitely. And I think it's very important when you're learning how to decide what action you want to do next to figure out why you lost the touch. So Benitez lost this touch, but she did some things well. She chose the right action. She just didn't execute it well. So if you want to do that action, like that shouldn't be an indication that you picked the wrong, that you like chose wrong. You know what I mean? Like if she did that action in the same situation next time, but executed it better, she would win that touch.
For sure.
Whereas I think she's being a little stubborn, even though Perez is doing a good job of tricking her into thinking that she's going backwards. Perez needed to, like, it took her 3 tries to realize that she needed to actually pull instead of being stubborn and trying to force that to work. So
for sure.
Yeah. So why you're losing touches is extremely important when you're building a bout as well. And I think she's doing all the wrong things right now. She like believes that she can beat the attack and prep by continuing to do a long attack better and hasn't realized that the answer is to pull, just do it better.
Yep.
And there she tries to attack again.
A nice pause to provoke the idea that the pull is coming, and then the nice sharp lunge again. Gets the arm pull right in the middle, right back to the action that's going to ultimately put her in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Again, but that one a little bit quicker than the other one, and she gets out in front. So a little bit quicker beginning, then the hard pause, and then the more explosive, longer lunge to reach Benitez from a different point in the strip. She doesn't wait for her to get so deep, and she gets ahead of that lunge rather than almost waiting for the lunge.
Yeah, my problem here is Benitez is still like reacting. Like you can see clearly that Perez is the one initiating this action, and Benitez is still waiting for her.
But I think that's a product of the work Perez has done to change that first tempo has gotten in Benitez's head, and she feels as though she can't tell. She can't tell what's happening. She can't tell what action she's looking at. And when you don't believe, you become really susceptible to this kind of
hesitancy,
subtle manipulation that Perez is doing. And so now we've got this break, and we're going to, just to preview what we're going to look at in the second half, is what you've seen is a whole lot of 2 steps, pause, lunge from Perez. 2 steps, and then the pause provokes that committed second step and the slight arm pull from Benitez to extend, and then lunging into that extension. And what we're going to see in the second half is that when Benitez adjusts to that, Perez takes the pause out and starts to do the same type of action, 1-tempo lunge with those just bang, bang. But instead of 1-tempo pause lunge, it's just going to remove the pause, and she's going to go on the attack with the same kind of step, and she's going to end up getting ahead of Benitez again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like what you said at the beginning. It's all about adjustments, and Perez makes really good ones here.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So we see she tried to get the pause. Benitez has now realized, I can't be watching her. I have to make committed actions, and she just goes on the attack.
Yeah.
She's not looking. She is predetermined. The attack and prep is coming. I'm going to go hit this attack, and it works for her.
Honestly,
which is a nice adjustment coming out of the break.
Honestly, I think she's still watching a little bit. It was much better executed than the other ones, but I do think she's still watching a little bit. It's just that Perez is so late this time that, and maybe it's that leads her to, as you say, remove the pause in a second like she does. So
yeah. And then that one, Benitez pulls the arm, but the feet are still very committed there. That's one step and lunge rather than putting in that second step that she was getting hit on before.
Yes.
So it looks kind of junky, but I don't actually, the more I watch this, the more I don't really mind that referee's call there, because I do think, like, Benitez has shown the commitment with the feet, and there's not enough of that arm pull in that tempo to justify an attack and prep.
Especially since
that kind of commitment.
Yeah, especially since Perez is really stationary when she does it. So if she had been going forward more, then that would be hers for sure. But she's not really catching the right moment. She's like just.
Sorry, can you pause it real quick?
Sure.
So now we're looking at a situation where Perez can no longer find that 2 steps pause lunge because Benitez has taken out that tempo.
Yes.
She's going with the one big step lunge. She's made that adjustment. And so now Perez needs to either change the game and start making traps, start making other things, or find a new way to do her tempos in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for everyone who wants to learn something from this bout, she's going to figure out a way to do the tempos in the box.
She chooses the latter.
Yeah. So then you see this one. Benitez might have beaten herself a little bit. Probably questioning, thinking a little too much. But Perez comes out a little more aggressive than she was before, a little more pressure. There's not the same hesitation on the beginning, gets in deeper with the lunge and makes the attack.
Yeah, I think, again, this is kind of a half action. Like, Benitez realizes that she's being attacked in prep a lot, but so she goes for a parry here, but it's not, it's like, again, with kind of slow feet forward, it's not a distance trap, it's just, you know.
But I think part of that, too, is she was expecting the lunge to come a little bit later than it did.
Could be.
She was expecting Perez to do that hesitation and then the lunge from the almost complete stop, and the lunge came out of sort of
it could be that
step into the lunge.
That's true. It could be that the timing wasn't quite what she expected.
Mm-hmm. So I think she gets caught a little flat-footed right there, and that's why she ends up just flailing rather than really being in control of what she wants to do. Because that lunge just comes just a fraction earlier than she's expecting it.
I think that's also an interesting action that a lot of people don't have in their repertoire, is that, like, Perez is actually preparing on her attack and prep, which kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but but it can work really well if you know that this action is coming, because, like, it's the right thing to do. They want to parry you, so the right thing to do in that situation is to hold a little bit. So
to hold and go around that parry. Yeah. I mean, it's like most things where something that is not technically correct can be a great solution if you know you're doing it and you can control when you do it.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about fencing. There's so many ways to, like, fix your problem.
Yes. Again, the pause there is not nearly as big as the other ones, and now she's just getting to Benitez earlier than Benitez is ready for it.
Yeah, we'll watch
Earlier
that.
we were seeing her do those extra toe taps, and this one it's just one step go.
Yeah, we'll watch that one again.
Yeah, so you can see one step and lunge instead of the 2 steps and lunge means she's hitting Benitez, not a full tempo, but a half tempo or that mini step earlier than Benitez is expecting to be hit.
Yep.
And it's completely throwing her off.
Yeah.
Because pause it real quick. Because what Benitez is seeing from her perspective on this trip is the same thing that she was seeing in the first half. Perez comes forward a little bit and then lunges. And she was getting hit on it early, and then she figured out a solution, and now she's getting hit on it again. But it's looking very similar where she's standing, and she's not really figuring out, the tempo has actually changed that little bit. So this action that looks the same, that feels very similar, is not the same at all. And I need a new solution to this problem. And she's having a hard time figuring that out, which is, again, credit to Perez
For tricking her over and over again.
To figure out how can I make this one action that was working and then stopped working for 2 touches, what small tweak can I be to get right back in my comfort zone and keep hammering her on my favorite action?
Mm-hmm.
Like, keep hammering her on my favorite action over and over again. I mean, she's doing a great job controlling her body and demanding that her body execute this, like, tempo lunge exactly how it needs to be executed with such small differences.
Totally. See, that again is like a half action from Benitez. And like Perez is mixing up the timing quite well, but I think if she did everything the same here, but just committed to going backwards, like at this moment, like just take 2 steps backwards, but she's getting stuck on her feet and is getting hit.
But I think I agree with you, but I think part of the reason she's stuck on her feet there is because she's still got this idea that lunge is going to be a little bit later. She thinks she's got a little more time. And so when you had paused it there and you saw where Perez's lunge was, at that point, Benitez is already in a lot of trouble because Perez is close enough to hit her with the extension.
It's
and
true.
So she's expecting that lunge to come just fractionally later. And Perez is doing a great job of coming when she's not expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's creating these half actions. That it's not because Benitez is incapable of full action. She's a very good fencer with a lot of strong results, but Perez is catching her on her heels over and over again because of that control of those fine rhythms and those fine movements.
She's just slightly ahead tactically.
Yep.
She apologizes. Benitez does not want to hear it.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Again, she just thinks there's going to be a longer pause there. Mm-hmm. Benitez, again, is expecting the second step to give her time to finish that lunge. Perez is taking that second step out, and she's ahead. I mean, she's just ahead on everything at this point in that step lunge. And Benitez is not even processing it because she's so convinced that she's got that extra tempo that she was seeing in the first half of the bout. And it's not that she's talked herself into it. She saw that extra tempo. She adjusted to that extra tempo.
And now it's gone.
In the moment, in pressure, it is with all that pressure in this moment, when you are so convinced that you've figured something out and now something that looks the exact same is hitting you, it is so hard to step back and say, oh, wait, there is a change. I need to adjust.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
And that was a nice touch, but it's pretty late to be pulling it out. I mean, it's the right solution. She's calm. She's relaxed. She matches the tempo the right way that time. Good work.
It's also still kind of a half action, though, in my opinion.
Yep, but a half action that's finally executed at the right tempo. She's actually stepped back at the moment of the commitment instead of waiting or instead of being late. And then, because, I mean, that's the icing on the cake, that she's done such a good job manipulating those tempos in the box that now, as soon as she puts in any kind of pause, Benitez is sitting there thinking, I'd better commit because
I'm going to get hit in prep.
Yeah. And now it's just such an easy trap.
Yeah, that was a great touch.
Oh, this is a great touch. And to be calm enough in the moment fencing for the Olympics to not just think, oh, I just need 3 touches. Let me just close it out. Let me just stick to what's working. And to sit there and say, I'm not going to stick to what's working. I'm going to do what's right and execute a touch that well. I mean, that's great fencing.
Yeah, to do a well-executed fourth intention like that at this like pressure point is pretty nice.
Yep. There's the prep. Back to the 2 steps that she saw early, and then just so clean, such a great touch. And then, again, manipulation of that step lunge, manipulation of it. This one's a lot smoother. This one's back to that 1 step when she had just shown the 2 steps and the step back. Now she smooths it out a little bit, makes it more of an attack. I guess it's still a check and a lunge, but takes away that second step.
It is much smoother, though, for sure.
But she takes away that second step that she had just showed her for the steps back, goes 1 step and lunge, and just that subtle manipulation of when does the commitment from Perez come? Does it come after 1 step? Does it come after 2? She even showed some 2.5 early in the bout. She's making it really hard for Benitez to have any idea when the actual action is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that so many people, as they start thinking, well, how do I take the next step? How do I get from having my C or even having my B? How do I get to really being competitive at a Division I level? This is the type of thing you can really learn from.
Exactly, for sure.
I mean, this type of, when you start talking about really high-level fencing and what it means to be in control, it's not just reading your opponent's mind and saying, okay, this time they're going to go straight attack, so I'm going to jump back. This time they're going to go long attack, so I'm going to go attack and prep. This time they're going to go back, so I'm going to extend. There's definitely components of that and feeling out that tactical wheel, but there's also this huge component of, can you just beat someone and ignore the tactical wheel? Just manipulate the timing, control when the touch happens to a degree where you can just keep doing jump lunge. The same tempo as jump lunge, just with 2 steps instead of a jump. The same tempo as jump lunge, just with 2.5 steps.
Mm-hmm.
And take somebody who's a really high caliber fencer, take them apart and control them the whole way. I mean, that is a skill.
Yep.
And that is the type of thing that can really help your fencing jump up.
Sometimes I hear people say that the same thing won't ever work twice on a good fencer, but I really dislike that phrase because there's so many different ways you can disguise an action, and if you say that, it's just really an oversimplification of things. Like you've like you said before, Benitez is a good fencer who's had good results, and she's been hitting prep 9 times in this bout, 10 maybe.
Something like that, yeah.
because Perez is playing her game well, is mixing up the execution of the action, and has kind of like been able to trick Benitez into believing she can make this thing work over and over again. So.
Yep, completely agree. And then the same thing when you say like people use that phrase, the same thing won't work twice on a good fencer. People often take that to a macro scale where they say like, oh, that means I can't attack and prep twice.
Yeah.
Well, really good fencers can attack and prep 4 or 5 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So those 4 or 5 different actions. And the more ways that you can execute the same action, the more tools you have in your toolbox, and the harder it's going to be to fence you.
For sure. And for the last touch?
Yeah, I was going to say it's all over now, but the headlines. And then finishing it out with the trap. Benitez at that point, she's lost. I mean, she can't tell what's real and what's not from Perez at that point. Perez has just fenced such a great bout and done such a good job controlling. And I think that's that type of bout where you don't sit there and watch really crazy athleticism, where you don't watch somebody pull out an amazing preem followed by a sky hook, followed by some sort of back flick, stop cut, and then a flunge that covers half the strip. There are great touches in fencing, and there's something really amazing about watching like a super athletic, amazing, incomprehensible touch. But there's something equally amazing to me in watching somebody who really just gets the technicality and locks in that moment. And that's something that like, it's a long process to learn to flunge half a strip. I mean, that's a lot of weightlifting. That's a lot of training. And it's going to score you some cool touches. There's probably the same amount of training to understanding how to control the fine elements and the fine actions and the tempos of a box. And it's going to win you a lot more touches.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's going to do just so much for your ability to fence at a high level. And quite frankly, it was cool to see a bout where it was just so clear and so easy to see how those small changes could make something look like a beginner could do it.
Yeah, it's true.
In a macro sense, we just watched 2 people who'd been fencing for a year, and one of them just kept falling for the same action.
Yeah, sort of.
But that's not what happened. What we watched was 2 really good fencers get tanked, and one of them tangled the other one up in a deceptively complex game and just outclassed them in sort of the finer details of fencing.
For sure.
Which is awesome, and there's a lot to learn from that. And yeah, that's why I'm here. It's because I feel like people should. I mean, it's a great bout to watch and see how you can take one action and turn it into almost a full bout.
Yeah, it's cool to watch the bouts that are like really back and forth with a ton of athleticism, but I think it's also probably much more instructive to watch blowouts like this because you can see someone really get into their rhythm, doing the things that they want to do, and just kind of taking the other person's game apart completely. And at a high level, that's hard to do. So
a specific type of blowout, because there were definitely times where I was on the receiving end of a blowout where it wasn't necessarily subtlety that was beating me. Somebody just outclassed me, and sometimes you just learn that you need to get better.
Yeah, that's fair.
But this one is this was not a case of, wow, Perez is just such a better fencer with such better technique and just better actions, and she's stronger and she's faster, and Benitez couldn't keep up. Benitez could keep up just fine.
To be
if
clear,
they had a footwork race, they'd have been right next to each other. If they took lessons, they'd have been doing the same drills.
Mm-hmm.
They were completely comparable fencers on the same plane, and it was a fair fight, and Perez did a great job of sanding off all of the rough edges of her fencing and putting Benitez in an unwinnable situation.
Yeah, totally.
And that's a skill that really pretty much anyone can improve on and learn from and grow with. I mean, that's something that you can take home to your training and to your gym, and you can think about it in practice. You can think about it when you watch other people fence. Why are these things happening? And then you say, can I hit this same touch 5 times in a row? Not if you do it the same way 5 times. If you do the same touch 5 times in a row the same way against anybody decent, they're going to hit you. But if you can manipulate it, change it just a little bit, bluff it a little bit different, hide it a little bit different, you might actually be able to pull off the same action 5 times in a row. And if you can do that, then you're really well on your way.
Totally. And I think for anyone who wants to learn this skill, if you watch a video like this on YouTube, you should pay more attention to the preparation that the person is using than the end result of the action. Because again, you can easily minimize this into just saying shoot one by doing attack and prep over and over again, which I mean, technically is true, but you lose a lot of the subtleties of what happened by saying and thinking about it like that. So really pay attention to the preparations, like I was doing in the beginning of the bout. Skip back and watch what was happening, like why was this one successful, why was this one not successful. Look later, like at the difference between like this one was successful, so was this one, like what was the difference between them. How like does this one fit into the context of the bout compared to this one? Start thinking about fencing like that instead of just like, oh, she beat her in prep.
Attack and prep. She's an attack and prep. Yep, that preparation to set that action up. Remember, it can always important. It can go different speeds. It can involve different footwork patterns. Mm-hmm. We saw her do 2 steps. We saw her do two steps with a toe tap at the end. We saw her do one little jump. You can take bigger steps and you can take smaller steps. We saw some where her foot was finishing the lunge well short of the middle line. We saw others where her foot was actually like on the middle line. So those distances can change things. Mm-hmm. It can happen at different speeds. One time you can start really slow. Then later on you can start a little bit faster. All of these things you can mix together, mix and match, change some of them, keep some of them the same, change all of them. Whatever you want to do, they all play off each other, and it can create a lot more weapons for you to use on the strip.
For sure. Good bout suggestion.
Yeah, man. I remembered watching it live and thinking, man, this is a cool one to learn from. So glad to do it.
Definitely. Pete, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, man. It's a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Adios.